Apologies to Betsy and Deborah and Christy and others who've had me before. Nicole, Matthew, I may have done this before with you, Jolene, Victoria, but I'm not going to dwell on the demographics as much as I've done in the past. But just to set the stage for you all, I'm going to start with this notion about, if we're going to talk about culturally responsive practices, well, culturally responsive to whom or to what? What is our demographic? All right, because obviously the implication here is it's not Caucasian white people like me and the majority of you in the class tonight. All right, American-born citizens, third generation, fourth generation American Europeans. All right, but different people from different backgrounds. But so that we expand this notion of diversity, we didn't want to leave out in this multicultural country we live in that diversity can mean a lot of things. All right, diversity can be based upon age, gender, and sexual orientation is certainly topical today and has been for a decade or longer. All right, and religious affiliation, and for all you agnostics and non-believers, religious affiliation or not. All right, may not have any religious affiliation. That makes us diverse. Intellectual aptitude, physical ability, handicap and condition. And when we start to get into our immigrant students, or students from first generation from different countries, well, morals and ethics can be different, culture can be different, language can be diverse, family unit can be diverse, politics can be diverse as well. And you might be able to add even more diverse factors, all right? But in America, the melting pot, the polyglot nation that we are, and becoming even more browner, if you will, by the moment, all right? Diversity matters. And that's where this whole push is coming from. How diverse is your school district, and how much has it changed in 10 years? Well, I came across a webpage which I'd like you to go to and find your diversity score. It's in the chat box. Happens to be the first link. Go find your diversity score, but search by school building. I found if you search by school district, it won't work. Search by school building and let us find out what your diversity score is. By the way, this is what it is. The chance that two students selected at random would be members of a different ethnic group is your diversity index. Scores from 0 to 1. A diversity score closer to 1 indicates a more diverse student body. So if you're 0.01, you're less diverse. If you're 1, you are most diverse. So let's take a look and report to me what your diversity scores are. Good, Megan. Oh, Megan. That's quite a Caucasian, I'm presuming a Caucasian white school district that you're part of. Jolene, 0.64. Nicholas, 0.45. Aaron, also in a very, Aaron, Caucasian school district as well. Because diversity index could, in a primarily, let's say a Hispanic school building could be 0, right? Because every student you see would be Hispanic. So it doesn't necessarily have to mean white, but typically it does. Christy, out on the island, 0.3. Kimberly, 0.5. Let's see who can break the number. Matthew's up there. Niagara Falls, that makes sense, right, Matt? Geez, Matt, that's almost akin to, that's almost spot on with your percentage of African-American students, isn't it? That's within plus or minus 5 points. Alicia, 0.43. I'm interested in what Betsy got. Betsy, did you find yours yet? School 17, 0.55. All right. Very good. So most of us are in, well, most of you, except for Megan, all right, are in some very diverse, well, let's say diverse school buildings. Nicole, 4.44. Allison, 0.71. Which school did you put in there? Did you put Buffalo, Allison, or otherwise?
I put a specific school in Buffalo, Olmsted.
Olmsted, very good. 0.71. Well, that's good that Olmsted would have that high diversity rating, given Buffalo's history. Very good. Thank you, Mark.
Can I make a comment?
Sure can.
You know, it's the complaint about New York City public schools, and it's true that the school isn't diverse because it's 95%, you know, Black and Hispanic. There's no white kids. There's no Asian. It's not mixed.
Well, that's the point I just made a moment ago. You're right, Deb. And I didn't bring it into this lesson, but I think you were with me last semester, Debbie, when we talked about the browning of our city schools and the rapid rate that city schools are now servicing children of color. Do you remember that, Deborah?
Yeah, but the thing is it's still, the schools are still segregated because a school like a more, the school that you would have to apply to a more competitive high school will have a little more, they'll have more white students than a less competitive school. So you're really segregated.
Exactly. And that was behind my comment to Allison. She knows what I'm talking about. Buffalo has had that problem. In particular, it's highly competitive. Oh, geez, I'm going to, the school on the waterfront.
City Honors.
Yeah, City Honors. Excellent, excellent. Nationally recognized school, but their problem, Deb, is just what you're talking about. In a predominantly African-American city school district, most of the kids in City Honors continue to be white students. And Buffalo's had a big problem with that. So we get your point, Deborah. You're absolutely right. All right, so now we know, at least based upon this national scoring system, how you are. Well, New York City, Debbie, talking about you. You've seen this before, Deb. Just to give you all an idea as to how some of our major cities, as Deb was just mentioning, how diverse they are. This comes from the 16-17 school year, but this talks about their ELL enrollment. And you can see in the 16-17? Yeah, 16-17. The ELL enrollment by borough. And if we look at it here, we can see that I mean, they're close to like 27% on average, all right? Except for Staten Island, but about 25% on average are ELL kids in the city, in New York City. If we break that down even more, we look at places of birth, we find that most of the ELL students are actually born in the United States. But then look at the wide array of the top 10 places of birth. Allison, white folks who teach in the hood.
It's a real book, and the district offers it as professional development for the teachers.
Allison, is that part of the PD that you wrote to me about?
No, it's not. It's another one that we offer.
Very good. Very good. Sarah read the book. Good. Must be good. Wilson has one Native American teacher and the rest are Caucasian. We had a big problem with that, Nicole, trying to find Native American teachers, certified Native American teachers, even for our Seneca language courses in Gowanda, which is why I got hooked up with Fredonia to try to create a path to Seneca certification. It's difficult. Again here, the top 10 home languages. You large city schools, my goodness, how you're managing to cope with everything that's on your plate. This is just the top 10 languages in New York City: Spanish, Chinese, Arabic, Bengali, Russian, Urdu, Haitian Creole, French, Uzbek, and Punjabi. Buffalo has its own strategic support team dedicated to this. Here are their enrollment numbers. They're kind of dated now. I probably should have tried to update this. All right. But this is the ELL enrollment in Buffalo. I'm sure it's higher, much higher by now. Let me ask you this question, my friends. Is there a benefit? We always talk about the problems associated with poor immigrants moving into our cities. All right, but is there any benefit to immigration populations moving into city cores that you can think of? Victoria?
I guess a big one would be like the increase in language. I know a lot of schools in Long Island are developing dual language programs, which are making more bilingual kids, which is just beneficial in the long run.
Yep, absolutely. Are there any advantages to neighborhoods, by the way? Businesses? I'm speaking about my closest city here, and I know it applies to others as well. This has always been the drill, if you will, the routine in our country. Poor people move into the cities because of poor housing, low housing costs, and they build up little bodegas and little corner shops and little restaurants, Chinese and Spanish restaurants and Polish restaurants, doesn't matter, all right? And they buy up housing stock and they renovate it. And that's what's happening in the city. The west side of Buffalo is experiencing revitalization, all right? Granted, there are problems with gentrification that happen, and people get priced out of markets as well. But immigrant populations can have a very profound positive impact on declining neighborhoods. All right, let's look at your own districts now. I want to give you a little bit of background. Hands up, how many of you have visited at any time the report card? Victoria has, Nicole has. All right, most of you have. Well, let's just, for those who haven't, let's go take a quick look. This is public information that you can go to. Go to data.nyc.gov, and let's take a look at the demographic composition in your school district. I happen to have a couple screenshots here. When you go look at when you go to the site, you're going to be able to search for your school district, or frankly, your school building if you want. And you're going to start to see 2 years worth of data. All right, 17, 18, and 18. 17, 18, and 18, no. Tell me, is 18, 19 up yet? Yeah, it would be. You're 17, 18, and 18, 19. Thanks, Christy. Just so you know, and students of mine know this, if you look on the left, you'll find archive. You can go back further in time. The reports look a little bit different because Albany changes the formatting of the reports. But if you wanted to go back in time, you could go to the archive and find previous year's data. And in some of my other classes, I make you do that so that you can look at 10-year trends. But you can look at male and female. You can look at gender, free and reduced price lunch. You can see your ELL status. You can see the racial makeup and composition of your school. You can find you can see your percentage of special education students. If you are planning to apply for a position, this is a must. You need to go to this website and dig up as much as you can about the demographics and the student achievement of the school district or the school building you're interested in. To not do so is negligent. And if you're interviewing in front of me, I'll find you out because I'll ask specific questions to see how serious you are. And if you give me some cockamamie answer to it, and I know you didn't go take a look at us, I'll know that you really don't care. And you're off my list. It's part of your research and your into the district. Any surprises on the part of any of you for what you're finding in your district? Let me just poll a few of you. So Aaron, what's the, can you tell me the racial composition of either the school or the building district you were looking at? What's it look like where you live?
So I looked up my specific school, which is Star Point Middle School, and it's 94% white with 2% Hispanic or Latino, 2% multiracial, 1% Asian or Native Hawaiian, other Pacific Islander, and 1% Black African American.
Very good, Aaron. And Aaron, remember the lesson about zip code?
Yes.
Yeah. And Star Point, where its ranking is. Notice almost the one-to-one ability to predict what's going to come out of student achievement once you start to know the demographic factors like free reduced price lunch. That's all we need to know, frankly. You want to know how your district is doing in terms of student achievement? Look up the free reduced price lunch percentage and look up the racial composition. You're done. The next is just a matter of filling in the blanks. Let's have another district. One that's less homogenized. Matthew, Niagara Falls is what? Racial composition.
Sorry, I'm toggling back and forth between Safari and Google Chrome. I looked up LaSalle Prep, which is where I teach. It's about 50% white and 30% African American, 7% Hispanic or Latino, 9% multiracial. It's a lot whiter than I thought it was. And compared to
what's your FERPL, Matthew?
Say that again.
FERPL, free reduced price lunch.
Let me go look.
We're 100% free and reduced lunch in the district.
What is it in Niagara Falls?
We're 100% free lunch in the district.
Who's saying that?
Jolene?
Jolene?
I don't know if it's on the website per se, but I know that like all of our students receive free breakfast and free lunch.
And what's your district again, Jolene?
Niagara Falls, same as Matthew.
Yeah, I don't think it's 100% though. Is it, Jolene, or is it just that the policy now recognizes 100%, so everybody gets? You can't be 100% free to this person.
No, we're not. I saw in the other website that we were looking at before that it's not 100%, but it's pretty high. I think I saw that it was in the 70s.
Yeah, I would think that, Matthew. Sorry to dispute that, Jolene, but that just doesn't seem right. Which Jolene? Now, were you looking at a building, Jolene?
Like in our building, and we're in one of the higher buildings, all of our kids get free lunch. Like I was under the impression that nobody in the district paid anything for meals within our district.
Okay, let's separate things out here. Separate things out, because recently, within a year, some districts have, by policy, decided that every kid's going to get a free reduced price lunch.
So that might be the policy in our district.
Right. On the other hand, which is why I asked the question about the building, it's possible that a building could have a very high number and another building a lower number, which would get you to the average of 60 or 70. But I'm tending to think, Jolene, it would be. Are you saying that you saw that number in the report card 100%, Jolene?
No.
No, then that's because of policy. Niagara Falls has decided that enough of the children need it that they're going to pay for it, and they did a cost-benefit analysis and figured we're going to pay for it. It's not going to bring it back.
Okay, that makes
Kudos
sense.
to Niagara Falls for doing that. All right. Quickly, because then we get a cultural response with 621. Center for Immigration Studies, Lockport did the same. Thanks, Nicole. Very good to reinforce the point. Center for Immigration Studies, if you're just looking for data on immigration, that's a good place to go. We have here a map of the number of immigration households in the United States. And it's not surprising that along the California coast in particular, because of the farms, all right, because of the history of the area, it's not called San Diego, San Francisco, all those Spanish names without a reason. It used to be a Spanish colony, all right? Arizona, Texas, all right? All these states, of course, have a lot of immigrant households, as well as down South Florida, Cuban households in particular, all right? And a lot along Eastern Seaboard as well. It doesn't quite show up as well. We have centers of the country that have some high incidence of immigrant households, primarily due to farms and meatpacking in particular. All right. So would anyone care to dispute the point that we are living in a very increasingly diverse country? And even in some of our typically traditionally white neighborhoods, we're starting to see more children of color, certainly more children from poor households because of the income inequality that's happening in this country. All right. So if we can establish that fact, at least, that we're a diverse country, becoming more diverse, then we have to try to see if we can make the argument that we ought to be adapting some of our practices to address the needs of a culturally diverse student demographic. The Regional Educational Laboratory talks about culturally responsive instruction. If I could, I would like to change it. Let's not just think about instruction. I think we need to talk about everything that we do. All right? Which is why later on I'll get into culturally responsive student management suggestions. But really, it could be culturally responsive curriculum, culturally responsive instruction, culturally responsive assessment, culturally responsive student support services. Remember everything we talked about aligning? Can really apply to everything that we do. All right? But they tend, the articles I found tend to focus more, they call it CRT, culturally responsive teaching. Let's expand our vision if we could. First, the definition, what is it? Gloria Ladson-Billings tends to be a pronounced proponent of this approach. She defined culturally responsive instruction as a pedagogy that empowers students intellectually, socially, emotionally, and politically by using cultural reference to suggest that culturally responsive instruction allows educators to address social barriers that cause disparities in student achievement. And I can tell you, working in Gowanda with students 25% Native American, and with the long history of Native American education, the sad, sorry history of Native American education in New York State, there is a difference, a pronounced difference. And those of you working with other student populations other than white middle class European, I would tend to think probably recognize the same thing. Whether you would buy into culturally responsive practices would be a different thing, but I don't know, I'd be hard pressed to think someone could say that there are not cultural differences to learning, cultural differences to behavior, cultural differences to treating adults or each other. There are. So you want trying to tailor your instruction with mindful of these barriers. Educators help students overcome obstacles and succeed. That's the hope. Here are some suggestions for what teachers can do. But now I'm going to challenge you later on here. We're going to be looking at what teachers can do. I had a hard time finding things that we can do as principals and superintendents and central office administrators, all right, special ed directors, etc. But I want you to put on your future hat. I want you to think of this time from here on out, as we're talking here, from a leadership perspective, all right? Not from a teacher's perspective. Change your hat, please. So I'll ask you momentarily what we can do as leaders, but these are what teachers can do. Acknowledging the contributions of all students. Connecting the classroom to the real world. We often talk real world. What's that mean? Students are more likely to engage if they are interested in the material and can relate to it. Teachers should incorporate more familiar touchstones in the lesson plan as students reflect the connections between the schoolwork and their everyday lives. I may be bad at it, but I occasionally try to do it in this class and all my classes. Refer to things that are happening in the real world. I guess that's why I keep going back to the reopening. All right, to try to make it a bit more real for what you are all going through. It's why I went through the state aid assignment with you, because that's something you're going to have to do soon. All right, using consistent body language with all students. Teachers unconsciously exhibit more favorable body language for students that remind them of themselves. For students who have felt marginalized with their cultural backgrounds, positive nonverbal communication have an important effect on engagement. Having students work together in diverse groups, that would make sense, right? And welcoming student feedback throughout the year. Again, these are things teachers can do. Teachers can't do things without your help and promotion. Hold that thought. What can we do to promote this? I'm going to ask you right now. and later, I think, as a matter of fact. What can I do as educator to promote access to and use the following culturally responsive approaches? So, given what I'm about to go through, let's hear from you. What can you do as an administrator? Yes, Victoria.
I guess I have two. So regarding like high school English language arts, admin can help teachers approve books that are written by people of color, which is really rare. And then the second one that I've noticed in my own district is providing electives that are based on various cultures. So we have a class that's African American Studies, we have Latin American Caribbean Studies, we have women's literature. So we have a lot of different courses, and that's something that admin can really push for.
Yeah, I saw your list. That was excellent. In fact, later on in the presentation, those of you who got this to me before Saturday, I'm going to highlight your contributions, and we'll see what Victoria is talking about, all right? I'm starting to see some good suggestion here. I'll let you look at those while I continue, all right? This is kind of recap what we talked. The contrast in demographic composition of educators and students is cause for concern because research shows that students' race, ethnicity, and cultural background significantly influence their achievement. There's extensive evidence from achievement test scores, grade promotion rates, graduation rates, and other common indicators of school success that students from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds experience poorer education outcomes than their peers. So we need to get over that, all right? In our processes, we need to find a way to overcome that. I'm just looking quickly. Christy, having conversations, uncover our own personal biases. We've talked about that back in ethics too, right? Examining our own biases and being real honest with ourselves. What do I really believe? How do I treat that parent from another country who comes in maybe with flip-flops and dirty jeans? Because that's the best they can do on that particular day, all right? Or one baby on the hip and the other one in tow. All the nonverbal cues that we might give, right? So now I'm asking you, what can you do to promote socio-cultural consciousness? And rather than just put in the chat box, one of you raise a hand or pipe in. What's a suggestion, Jolene, for raising social cultural consciousness?
Ensuring that you're communicating to parents and families in multiple languages, if you have multiple languages within your building, not just sending something home in English. If you can, translate it to another language or get an interpreter in the district to maybe, call that family.
Very good, very good. Can I get you to focus in on the question on this area though? How can you, as a superintendent, promote a teacher's social cultural consciousness?
Oh, I think that goes back to, the making sure that PDs and teachers are aware of it and have the resources to handle it.
Very good, very good. Yeah, PD is one of our best vehicles towards doing that. I come back to what Christy said because it's right here also. Recognize discrimination. All right, help our staff to do that. Maybe bring in a third party. Maybe have small groups. At least as superintendent, you have to create the time and find the time and the money. And then give it, if you will, to your building principals to address the needs of the buildings. All right? Remember we talked about creating capacity and structures? That's your job as superintendent. Yeah, Kimberly, I like that one too. Survey teachers prior to the PD, right? Find out where they're at. What do they say that they need to become more socio or culturally aware? And in defense of all of you and all teachers, what do you know about students who speak Punjabi? What do you know about students who are coming to you from Nicaragua, from very poor families in Nicaragua? What do it's rare that we know that. Christy's now on an island off the coast of the United States. All right? It's a different world for her. She needs to immerse herself in the culture. We have to know what we don't know. I like that one. Also, yeah, multicultural clubs. That makes sense, Allison. All right, so that's some things we can do there. And we'll find that they tend to be a bit repetitive. How about this? Ooh, changing attitude. Was there anything more difficult to change than attitude? I don't have children, so I might qualify a baby's diaper. But aside from baby's diaper and attitude, anything harder to change? Jolene, we had a problem this year when our E&L teachers was told that she couldn't have an interpreter come in for PTC. When she spoke with the superintendent of the situation, he ensured the funding was available for the interpreters. Oh, outside of the chain of command, Jolene?
She happens to know the superintendent. She work out at the same gym, so she like brought it up, not even realizing. Just like mentioned it, and our superintendent was like, "No, we definitely have the funding. We can handle that. We shouldn't have parents that feel like they're not involved, but went and handled it right away." So, not necessarily following the chain of command, but that was just the situation.
That was nice, though. All right, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Given the choices, I'd rather get slapped on the hand rather than these children not get what they need. What can we do to promote teachers' commitments and skills? Time and money, again, comes back to PD. Opportunities for practice, all right? Maybe look, as we said earlier, in the alignment course or session, that we look for a teacher's evaluation rubric that assesses these things, all right? Actually shows that we value these things, all right? And maybe, careful with this, but maybe it becomes a matter of your formal evaluation system that you're actually assessing the degree in which people do these things that we're talking about now, all right? It doesn't mean that you wouldn't give an opportunity for practice and maybe some formative behavior adjustments and formative observations to get better at it, all right? Maybe in good times we hire a coach, a TOSA, teacher on special assignment, who can help teachers to develop their skills and develop their curriculum. Look at all these good ideas that are coming in here. Megan, cultural immersion if possible. Yeah, if possible for teachers. We had a situation, Megan, and I told this before, when in Gowanda, we were suffering from generations ago, Indian children were taken from their families back in the 1900s and up to about 1950 and educated in Indian schools. And that problem stayed with us for years. Some of those children, the last group of children who were educated in those schools in the 50s, were still alive. Our younger teachers, like you, Megan, didn't know anything about this. So about my 4th or 5th year there, when we had changed a lot of the staff over through retirements, et cetera, I actually planned a session, a dinner, and on the reservation with these ex-students. And we had a nice conversation about the history of Indian schools by a Canisius professor. And then the best part was when these ex-students, these graduate students from the Thomas Indian School, they talked to my young teachers. It was really, really powerful. And then every year after that, whenever we got the new teachers came in, Megan, part of our mentoring program was for them to go down to the territory and participate in a full-day workshop led by Native American educators, so they could just start to hear from their perspective, right? Time and money.
Can I make a comment? That's a great point. Just having opportunities, intercultural experiences, and it's one thing that right now, the federal money, like I went on a Fulbright Hays summer seminar for teachers. You said, what do you know about the Punjab? Well, I was there. I was in Amritsar because I got this to go on the part of this federal program. And another time, a group of teachers and I got money to go to the Dominican Republic to study the school system and understand how our kids are coming late as SIFEs and what the educational system was like for them there. But right now, that is something, that money is gone, and these international study opportunities have dried up. So that's really a problem. Because I think if you don't speak another language or experience these other things like you just described, how will you know?
That's great, Deb. At least it's fortunate that you were able to do that. And what a coincidence that you were able to learn more about Punjab. Punjab is a language, right? Spoken in India, right?
Yeah, it's that northern part that's borders with Pakistan, which of course were before all the divisions before 1947, it was one country. So there's a big mess over there, and now you can see in India there's a lot of anti-Muslim sentiment. But
right?
Yeah, it was amazing. It was an amazing trip.
India and Pakistan are poking each other in the eye on a regular basis these days.
Yeah. Bengali, because of all our Bengali students, as somebody pointed out in the chat. So it was very interesting to go to India.
Yeah, Ellison, I agree with you. I once said that about, using food as a way to connect. And some of you may remember one of my students of color, to be polite, corrected me on that. Oh, y'all white people are always saying use food to connect. Can't you come up with something different? I gave her credit for speaking up. All right, knowledge of students' life. You can see it's all about so much about awareness. All right, and a superintendent's job again to create opportunities, to find the money, to dedicate the money, to set the tone at the top. All right. Promote culturally responsive teaching. This is hard to see. You can see it in your own presentation. 639, I'm going to go a little bit faster. Here are some research-based, high-quality skills for teaching all students equitably. All right. Notice not equally, but equitably. So I'll leave that to you to take a look at because I know you're getting the point. I just wanted to remind us, why are we doing this? Because if we look right at the standard again, because it's our job as leaders to evaluate, advocate, and cultivate equitable, inclusive, and culturally responsive instructional behavior support practices. By the way, just to go back to the wheel I gave you in the beginning, let's not forget not only about language, all right, or the color of one's skin. Let's think about our LGBTQ plus students, all right? That there too, I mean, the simple use of proper pronouns is befuddling to old men my age, all right? And I had to reread a story. I had to reread an article in the newspaper the other day because they were talking about an individual and then they changed the pronoun to they, and I had to backtrack. Were they talking now, were more people entered into the story? No, that I realized that the individual did not want to be identified as he or she. It was a they, and I have to get used to that. So back to the culturally responsive, got a lot of people in that wheel that are different than me, I'll say, and I have to be responsive to that. All right. I would like you now to watch this short video. It's 4-minute video where a teacher or administrator, I forget what, an educator is talking about talking about what we just went through. But as you listen to her talk, would you please start to, in the chat box, list the things that you could do. Again, I just want to get more practice with this. List again the things that you can do to promote the suggestions she's talking about. And I might recommend that if you can remember, think about the 6 systems again. My words to you were that regardless of your initiative, whenever you're trying to improve something or any initiative you're engaged in, keep in mind the 6 systems where you provide leadership, communication, ease of delivery, performance, that people still want to work for you and they don't leave when you do this, hold people accountable, and have a concrete measurement for holding them accountable. Think of those things, if you will, as you're watching the video. The link is in the chat box. It's down a little ways. It's Edutopia. It's the 1, 2, 3. I think it's the 5th one down. Take a look at that. Watch that for a bit. And while you're watching, in the chat box, I'll be watching your comments about the things that you could do to promote, facilitate the suggestions she's making. Good, Nicole. I'm glad that you have some use for this. It makes me happy. Oh, are you having trouble, Matt? Let me see.
But I just see the article. I don't see a video.
Oh, okay, hang on.
Same thing. I can't find a video.
Just keep scrolling down the page. On
Yes,
the,
it's on. Thank you. It's there, down the page. It's under supporting school-wide culturally responsive practice. That's the video I want you to read. Actually, it's the only video. The other one's just a picture. Supporting school-wide culturally responsive practice. Yeah, Allison, Christie's elaboration on your point is more akin to what I'm looking for. Yes, learning walks, and Christie says provide them with time to conduct learning walks. That's what you need to do as a leader. Again, Betsy, what would you do to promote new strategies? Now you're getting it. Intervisitation, yeah. Right, Allison. Administrators play a large part for that safe, encouraging environment. That safe and encouraging environment. In fact, that's like number one on the list. You start there. Right, Nicole? I'm glad that some of you are pointing out the fact that teachers also need to feel that they are in a safe environment. And one should go hand in hand. We tend to be a relatively conservative group, teachers and educators. And we're not necessarily, on average, good at risk taking. Some of you may be, but on average, we tend to not be. And we need to have a safe environment in order to take risks. Someone answer this question for me. I'm going to look at the 6 systems. What might you do to hold people accountable to culturally responsive teaching? How would you hold them accountable, and what might the measurements be? Timing a master schedule. Very good. What could you do to promote accountability, and what would the measurements be? Data-driven conversations. Exactly. From that, Sarah, I'm presuming data derived through maybe an observation. Sarah, yeah? Clinical supervision. That's what I was trained in back in the 80s. You're right, Matthew. Matthew, could you give me a specific one? A specific goal. Type it in, Matt.
Okay.
Please. Sarah, did you have a comment?
I was going to share a goal that we have for my school. It's not cultural, but it's gender-based. So my principal realized that we have really low female participation. I think it's in athletics, if I'm thinking of the goal. We have it posted in our school. So one of the goals of our school is to increase female participation. I think it's just in extracurricular activities.
That's
We have a
good.
goal of 5% female participation.
And you can get the data on that.
Yeah, we had a 17%, I think, is where we're at, and he wants it to kind of, I don't know exactly what the numbered goal is, but I know we've talked about it right before school closure.
And now Allison and Kimberly are expanding on the question I asked as well. Build it in. So Kimberly, build it into pre-conferences and evals and measure items associated with cultural responsiveness. Exactly. As I said, maybe you can find an approved teacher rubric that would promote it, or you can adapt any of those rubrics. You could add it in, and it would probably pass muster with APPR. So you could add it. You'd have to negotiate it, of course, Kim, under APPR and Part 30, but you could do that. Allison's also said teachers submit their plans and how they'll incorporate it, and so you can measure that too and hold people accountable. I would advise you, by the way, to give people an opportunity to practice a new skill. Just like I do with you with all of your assignments, you're allowed to make a mistake and just get another chance to do it. Let's not forget that when we're asking teachers to take on a new strategy, we need to provide them with practice, all right? And sometimes a simple act of practicing over and over, all right, can qualify as a good score, all right, as we lead towards mastery. Yeah, Matt, that does make sense. And improve participation for students from diverse backgrounds. Exactly, Matthew. And if you know anything about clinical supervision, that's what it's all about. I would go into a classroom, Matt, and I would script, as they say, the behaviors. And I would tally, for instance, Matthew, the number of times the teacher said like and okay, for instance, the number of times the teachers called on a boy, called on a girl, called on a brown-skinned boy, called on a yellow-skinned girl, et cetera, and actually at the end present that data to them. And rather than be judgmental, this is what you did. And oftentimes, Matt, I said okay that minute. Yeah, you said okay 50 times in 40 minutes. You never called on the girls. I saw you lean in once to one of the female students. Otherwise, you're asking all the boys the questions. Only the students who raised their hands did you ask. You touched all the white kids. You didn't put a hand on any of the black children, a reassuring hand. That kind of data, all right. And if it's in an evaluation document, whether it be formative evaluations or peer observations, it's a good way to start changing behavior. I think we've got it. Good. You're doing a good job. You're putting on your leadership hats and putting aside your teacher hats for time being. And I like it. You all look very attractive with your leadership hats on. All right, it's 6:52. I think I want to leave this to you. This is just a little bit, this perspective is how do you put it into practice? All right, so let me go quickly through this because I do want to watch something else from, good, Sarah. Very good. She remembers, Matt. You must have made an impression. This is what you can do. Identify students' assets, which might be a matter of a survey again, too, right? We've talked about that before. Questionnaires, conversations, paying attention. Find their funds of knowledge matrix. There is a matrix. There's a link. If you go there, you can get the hyperlink and brainstorm and use that maybe in your class to identify that. Back to you, Nicole. Maybe that would be useful because there are other links in this site. Maybe you want to do that matrix. Just a suggestion to you. All right. Discover culture and cultural values. Obvious. Let's not forget, create a supportive classroom environment. Yes. Examine the curriculum. All right. Looking for biases, or as the assignment I gave to you, looking for a culturally responsive curriculum that's out there and letting us know about that. Very good. You're starting to see that happen. Increase relevance. Continue your own learning. Yes. Let's not forget the family connection. To actually get out of your office and connect with the families. Now, these were your examples. Again, I'm going to go through these quickly. Hope you don't mind. Betsy, she reviewed the Rochester City Schools course catalog and found courses that specifically reflect a culture-responsive theme. And they are African American literature, Latin American literature, global health, American Sign Language in Africa, African, is it diaspora? Is there an S supposed to be in there? I caught you, Betsy. Diaspora, early civilizations and advancement of humanity. Very good examples, Betsy. Rochester. Why? Because Rochester is a relatively very diverse school district, all right, as the Big Five are. Matt gave us the title of Curriculum, Social Work, and Diversity. I challenged him on that. He came back with one that was even more specific. This is a partnership between Niagara Falls Office of Multiple Careers and Niagara University. Has to do with race, equality, and mission, all right? And a service trip to the nation of Ghana in West Africa. Outstanding. Nicole gave us an ENL program at Wilson Central School District. And this too, standing alone in an ENL program, you might say, I don't know, that's kind of a normal routine these days. But when you started to dig deeper, you found that this was intended to focus on the child, recognize their worth, recognize their culture, and try to use that to promote their understanding of the English language. All right, taking in all the precepts that we just went through just a moment ago. All right. Victoria's contribution, she mentioned to us earlier. Look at this nice array of courses provided in her school. And like we said, remember, let's not forget diversity takes many shapes and forms. Women's lives and women's literature. They don't call it history for nothing, right? Victoria? She's got a story too in there. Let's tell it. Jolene gave us an example. Local history, African Americans. I love this one. When I was thinking about this, Jolene, that's a course I really like to take to know more about local history. But look at all the interesting things they do from Niagara Falls, the city of Niagara Falls. Because Niagara Falls has such a rich history as a nexus between Canada and the United States and the Underground Railroad and all that business. Really interesting. And so in Niagara Falls, they teach that. That's great. Rosie the Riveter. Christy, Facing Genocide. Oh, talk about one that's really topical right now, right, Christy? All of our history is being reshaped right now. And this is at Fayette Manlius, Christy, that you found this? Yeah. Interesting, because Fayette Manlius is a well-to-do, white, if you will, community, just this side of Rochester.
It is. It's actually in the Syracuse area. That's the district that I taught in prior to moving down to North Carolina. I taught at Fayetteville Manlius for many years, so I reached out to my former contacts and learned a little bit about this. This was very interesting.
Good. I'm glad to see that that's there, and it's very, very, very topical right now. Megan, history of rock and roll. Interesting. But because it's music, there's that catch, right, Megan? And then, you know, kids really don't know the history of their music and how it got to their ears. And this course is designed to do that. All right. Because we can go right back, bluegrass music, for instance. All right. And the blues and you can go right back to Ireland and Scotland for bluegrass and really see the link. All right. And then start to see how bluegrass and rhythm and blues gave us rock and roll, Elvis Presley. All right, it's really interesting, and it's a great way to catch on to kids of all different types. Native American roots of rock, really, Deb. Kim gave us Yorktown Central. This is a foundations curriculum. Again, I had to look at it to find the culturally responsive, and I underlined just so I wouldn't miss it what makes it culturally responsive. They include highly resonant stories and stories that feature prominent figures from different cultures, include vocabulary germane to particular cultures, etc. So its foundations does include this culturally responsive component, and it's good to see that major publishers are starting to catch on. Now, thank you for those contributions. I don't mean to undermine those of you who I didn't mention, but I just didn't get them early enough to get this in here. All right. NYU Steinhardt changed it. Okay. Oh yeah. Thank you all that have to leave. I'll see you later. Thank you for your kind attention. Bye-bye. See you next week. Just quickly, classroom management can also have a culturally responsive bent to it or emphasis. And to get you out of here in a decent time, I'm going to try to finish this early, all right, and go a little bit quickly. But recognizing of one's own cultural lens and biases, we really had to work on this hard in Gowanda because Native American families, Native American extended families, Native Americans' way of handling the way they manage their own children is different than a typical nuclear white family, all right, middle-class family. And we really had to pay attention to that. And I dare say many of you find that same thing. You know, people discipline their children differently in India and in Pakistan and in Nicaragua as we do, as opposed to how Americans might. So we need to know that. So even our discipline measures and our student management systems can be culturally responsive. So just because I don't want to be too pie in the sky here and too Tinkerbell, let's make sure that we recognize that this approach is not valued in all quarters. And in searching for an example, I had to go no further than Fox News. Now, I'll try not to make any editorial comment. I'll allow you to make your own decision, but I'd like you to watch this debate. Not debate. There was a guy making a presentation on Fox News. It's the last link. Let's watch this. This is about 7 minutes, and I'll meet you on the other side, and maybe we can have a mini debate about the worth or not of this point of view. All right, so watch this right now while I take a vocal cord break. You're done, Deb? No more? Let me see if I can troll for some comments tonight. Nicholas, I haven't heard much from you this evening, and maybe Alicia, you'll help me out too. Any comments, Nicholas, on what you just viewed?
Well, it's a bit difficult for me to watch, but I don't know, some things that really stuck out to me were things like, teaching students to be professional agitators. The D'Souza guy said something about, basically all the cultural responsive teaching can teach students is, how to join Black Lives Matter or Antifa. It's just there's a lot of kind of viewpoints that seem to like hit on some like a certain base's like hot buttons, I guess, but they're not really talking about like what the students are getting out of it. I don't know.
No, yeah, I see that. I see just what you're talking about. Victoria says it's frustrating because a lot of people use videos like this as their sole news outlet and blindly believe it. That can be problematic. Thank you, Nicholas. And by the way, Nicholas, I love the shirt you got on tonight. It's cool.
Thank you.
Alicia, what's your critique, if you would?
So I wasn't actually able to finish the whole video, but I also have a social studies background, and just thinking about some of this and even some of Trump's comments recently about indoctrinating our youth and this and that, it's just, I just don't understand. I always taught all of that, your opinion matters, and we really looked at things. And so I think thinking about this video, it's just crap. I just think that
you want to wash your hands, right? Or wash your eyes.
Yeah.
Tell me this, any of you. Thanks, Alicia. Tell me this. Do you think the two individuals in the video understood what culturally responsive practices are? Erin, what do you think? Do you think they actually understood it?
No, because the Dinesh said, culturally responsive teaching would be like someone teaching me about being Indian when I'm Indian. That's not what it's about. It's not teaching about different cultures. It's teaching how to give everyone a voice and equity. They think when they see culturally responsive teaching, all they think about is culture, and they automatically think it's just going to be, oh, well, let's talk about, African American, month and learn about this, and glorified social studies, which it isn't. So they have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, I primed you obviously with that question because that's the first thing that I noticed. It doesn't appear like they know what it is they're supposed to be talking about. And your analysis fits with what I was thinking, Erin, that if you're going to talk about something, at least know what it is you're talking about. And to fertilize the field, let me ask the second question. Do you think that we're capable of teaching culturally responsive and the 3 R's at the same time, or is it too much for you?
I think it's possible. I think it just is going to take a really conscientious mind shift of educators.
Yeah. The thought that went through my mind is that we're capable of doing more than, walking and chewing gum at the same time. We can teach you how to add and subtract and still use culturally responsive practices at the same time. We're capable. We're capable. Another reason I put this out, it kind of goes to what Victoria said. Parents, grandparents, voters are watching this type of news. All right. They're consuming news like the rest of us are. All right. They have their favorite stations. And none of us want to be so naive as to think that just because we as educators might think it's a good idea, that we don't have critics out there. Because we do. And we have some pretty hardcore critics. And so we need to be, every now and then, as much as you might not like it, Victoria, you need to get your eyeballs and your ears dirty a little bit and go walk on the other side and see what's being said about us, about education, about politics, just so you're prepared. Because once you're a superintendent, for instance, central office administrator, you're going to be in front of the public. And over time, the first thing you start to listen for are cues. What is their perspective? What's behind the question they're asking me at an annual meeting when we're talking about the budget? What's behind the question they're asking at this vision and mission setting meeting that we're having? what's this person's political perspective? What's their religious perspective? And maybe quickly, because I got just a few more minutes. I got some time. Maybe some other hot topic issues in education around pedagogy and content, if you will, that maybe the majority of us feel are, why aren't we teaching this? And others are saying, no way. Other hot button issues in this country, please.
For me, the biggest one.
Great LGBTQ. Don't ever take that for granted that that's going to go over easily.
I was going to say, and especially with children's books and picture books, certain communities, schools have no problem. The other schools are, there's a lot of pushback.
Exactly. Good one to point out, Deb.
The other thing is it's interesting because you can go into the Caribbean communities, very conservative. So, they're not going to, they don't want to see Heather Has Two Mommies and all those books.
Yeah.
Julian is a mermaid.
Very good point. We should never generalize about any population, right? Or about any demographic. That's also a good word to live by. Good, Sarah. Vaccinations in schools, absolutely. Allison, bathrooms, which is similar to the LGBTQ issue, absolutely.